my screen will advance. There we go. Hopefully, this is the talk you're here to see. So I'll start off by saying I always want feedback, and my joke always is, if you think it was a great talk, tweet about it. If you think it was terrible, email me. Don't tweet. But really, whatever method there is to get feedback to me, I'll take it. I know that there's event feedback and session feedback as well. If you'd like to reach out to me personally, that's cool too. This is a brand new talk. It covers a couple topics that I've covered in less depth over the years, but I'm really curious to see kind of what you think, if you think it was full of good stuff, if you think half of it was good stuff. If you wish there were things I had gone in a little more depth on, would love to hear all that. So since I'm saying feel free to reach out, you might want to know how to do that. So this is me. These are all the different ways to reach me. I'm SQL at Speed pretty much everywhere online. GitHub, Twitter, LinkedIn, all that stuff. Blog is SQLatspeed.com. Here's a little more about me, and really the only interesting thing here is the last point. So it's awesome that you're here and a part of this. I would encourage you, wherever you're attending this from, stay involved. It's a really challenging time to run local user groups because obviously just about everything is still online. And so the notion of local is a bit strange right now. Do what you can to stay involved with your local group, whether it's putting on user group meetings or Saturdays or what have you. Whether you're speaking, whether you're a volunteer, whether you're an organizer, attendee, whatever. It's really great that you're here. Continue being a part of stuff like this, and continue to try to support your local groups as well. I've even though there is no pass anymore, I believe strongly that the success what leads to the success of large events like this is making sure we have healthy user groups everywhere. So whatever you can do to be a part of that, please do that. I would not be standing here today, though you can't actually see me, speaking to you without local user groups, having played a really big role in me learning things and me eventually speaking at them and then moving on from there. So, just a real quick slide in case you're not familiar with the states. I live in the state in red, and I live in about the middle of that state. So when we're free to travel again, if you ever find yourself in this part of the world, definitely look me up. As I noted, I'm SQL at Speed pretty much everywhere online, and that's a reminder for you to reach out just about any of the methods that I just showed, and B, it's a great excuse to show this slide. So I love talking data, I love talking AI stuff, and I love talking the combination of the two that we're going to dive into here in a minute. The only thing I like talking about more than that, though, is driving race cars. So if you have any interest in motor racing at all, and you think the data stuff, wasn't so great, but you like to talk about race cars, I'm always happy to do that. Okay, I will take a pause here because I'm getting a lot of kind of feedback noises from the Avatar Land app. Can one of the technicians or volunteers confirm that you can still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
But your avatar seems look like he had a broken neck. Because when you enter the Avatarland app, just hit the space bar so that when you move the mouse outside of the Avatarland app, it won't do the broken neck thing.
Okay.
Should
not bad. Let me do. All right, is that better?
Yeah, now you're just looking at us. Does not look like you have a broken neck.
Okay, well that's good. Okay, so let me. All right, so now that I've switched back to PowerPoint, am I still good?
Yeah, everything is
Okay, excellent. Okay, all right. So what we're going to talk about is I want to lay some groundwork before we get into the bot stuff. And what I think is really interesting about this is most of what we're going to go through is ways that Microsoft has allowed us to leverage chatbot technology, allows us to use the cognitive services language APIs in ways that we don't have to write any code for. That said, I do want to give you a little bit of brief exposure here that we won't actually build a bot on top of this, on ways that you can do this with code as well. So, you know, if you get to the end of this next 45 minutes or so and you're like, well, that was really cool and I'd like to take that and play with it, and that's as far as it goes, everything I'm going to show you can be done without writing a line of code. But if you get really interested in it, I do want to give you some exposure to some ways you can dive deeper and really kind of go down the rabbit hole with this stuff. So we're going to lay some groundwork, understand what cognitive services is, because that's kind of what powers everything that I'm going to show you. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time in what's called Q&A Maker, which you may surmise by the name is really just kind of a question and answer thing. And then we're going to present that as a bot, and I'm going to show you how to populate those and all that. But we'll dive through kind of what this is and how it works. We're going to talk about Luis then next, which is, it's going to be similar to Q&A Maker, as you'll see, but this is really where if you want a really deep conversational experience, Q&A Maker provides the basics, and it's, as you'll see, pretty easy for us to use. Luis allows you to go definitely several steps farther. So we'll just have kind of a brief tour there so you understand what it is and can kind of pursue that on your own if you think it's cool. And then what we'll do is, so I'm going to show you some samples of some bots that I have and talk about the different ways we can set these up and the different things they can do and all that. So we get towards the end, I actually want to walk you through creating one start to finish, and you'll see just how easy it is. You know, I've obviously pre-baked a lot of the demos here, so we're not sitting here waiting for resources to be provisioned and all that. But as we get towards the end, I'm going to show you how to make one of these. We're going to see all that happen. And you'll see just how easy that can be. And then we're going to wrap up with just some ways that I think this will help. I'm really happy that this session got accepted here, because one thing that struck me as I've played with these for some other projects is how useful this type of kind of chatbot over a question and answer layer service would have been in other jobs that I've had. And so you'll kind of hear me go back and forth with that throughout, is if you answer a lot of repetitive questions, as I found myself doing, you know, what data center is this server in? What environment is dev? You know, all those sorts of things. You can, like the title of this says, tell somebody to talk to your bot, because it can answer all this. And it means you don't have to pull out of what you're doing and kind of context switch and say, okay, I've answered this question for you. Now I'm trying to get back into query tuning or writing code or something like that. You know, you can point people to these resources, have them actually speak to it, and they don't have to bother you. I am going to take a minute and see. All right, I don't see if there are any questions right now. What I would say is, and I tested this in the presentation window earlier, is if you have a question, the way I believe it's supposed to work is go ahead and raise your hand. I should see that. I should at least hear a tone. And then I will say your name, and the technician should be able to unmute you, and we should be able to speak back and forth. So I will have some kind of natural question breaks. But if something comes up kind of mid-slide, feel free to raise your hand, and either myself or the technician should see that and be able to reach out to you there. So I do see there's a question in the chat, so feel free to use that as well. So it says, how do you have the subtitles at the bottom of your screen? So I actually turned subtitles on in PowerPoint. At the end, I can show you how to do that. I presented in February of 2020 at SQL Saturday BI in Austin, Texas. And that was kind of a mandatory thing there as an accessibility thing. And I found I actually really liked it. So I've kind of left that on from that point forward. All right, so let's get back into it. So like I said, it's important to understand, not that these happen by magic, but the layer underneath it, kind of what it is. We don't have to understand much, but we need to know that it's there. And it does then kind of open this world to us where if this is something we really want to pursue, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do here. But let's just kind of lay this groundwork. So Azure Cognitive Services is really it's a suite of APIs. The sub-bullet there in quotes is sets of ML algorithms to solve problems in the field of AI. Very bland, right? Very marketing speaky. That's intentional so I've worked not just on chatbots, but other parts of the suite for going on 3.5 years now. And the reason it's vague is because the things you do under the umbrella of a phrase like that keep getting more powerful, cooler, better, all those sorts of things. So they've left it vague because this is definitely a moving target. You can do things in these that was no part of the system or no part of the suite 3 years ago. As I mentioned, it's basically code that you can call with code of your own or bots of your own, which is most of how we're going to spend our time here. How can you use this stuff? So this isn't the only way you can use it. So I hope you don't walk out of here and say, well, that cognitive services stuff was kind of interesting, but I have kind of a limited use for chatbots. I wish there were other things I could do with it. There's a ton of other ways. So you can make standard REST API calls. So if you want to, write code, I tend to be lazy. I don't like to write code. If you'd like to, you can consume these through all the normal ways. As the link shows there, the documentation for this stuff, which I would say is not necessarily traditional for every Microsoft product I've worked on, the documentation for this is fantastic. Not only is it generally explained in depth and very well, also provides several examples in all the supported languages for how to do certain things. So even if you're like me and you're certainly not an application dev by trade, it's still pretty accessible for you if you want to dive in and do this. So what's in the suite? So again, we're not going to go too deep into this, but I want you to be aware if you walked out of here and said, well, the bot thing isn't for me, but cognitive services seem cool. So here's a list of what's in the suite. So there are basically kind of 4 main umbrellas, for lack of a better term. So you've got vision here, which gives you the ability to analyze images and videos and things like that. You may have seen demos of that where somebody will show an analysis of like a picture of somebody's face, and it will say they're smiling, they're angry, it will try to get a sense of their emotion from that. You'll also see things where, static cameras could be used to monitor like a floodplain or something like that. And so the camera can notify some emergency center that, the water level in the picture is higher than our threshold, and somebody should go out and have a look and make sure maybe that a dam hasn't burst or something like that. But vision obviously kind of plays with what we can see and gives you the ability to do a lot of interesting analysis on that. Speech and language really go hand in hand. So speech is kind of exactly what it sounds like. That's how text-to-speech works. That's how speech-to-text works. It can also do things like speaker identification and speaker recognition as well. That certainly deserves its own talk, so we're not going to dive too deeply into that here. But it does go hand in hand with language, because language is obviously the text part of that. And you can kind of wire these up where they'll all work with each other. But language is where we're going to spend the better part of our day here, because obviously we're talking about having a text conversation with a bot. So language and that kind of natural language understanding is key to what we're going to be doing during this session. There's also part of the suite has decision as well. I struggle with the proper description for this, because there's things like content moderation, where it's basically kind of an automated, not a bot, but it's an automated way to police like message boards and things like that. Content moderation used to be a part of a language. It's now under decision on the website if you go look at it now. So decision seems to be kind of a catch-all for things that don't fit under vision, speech, or language. But like I said, we're going to focus on language here. And I do want you to understand that kind of the way all of this works, the way all of these things talk to each other, is there are JSON payloads going back and forth. So we're not going to take a deep dive into this and break down API calls and go look at code as part of this session. But if you want to kind of understand that JSON and understand the structure there is how all this stuff talks to each other. So before we get into Q&A Maker, I'll go ahead and take a pause here and see if there are any raised hands or any questions. And it would appear no. So let's get into Q&A Maker. So what is this? So like I said at the top, based on the name, it kind of does exactly what you would think. So that shorthand name sounds like question and answer maker, right? Well, that's exactly what it is. The difference here is it allows us to serve information interactively to somebody. And obviously, we're going to do a demo here next, and I'm going to show you kind of a bunch of different ways and walk you through all the different components of what Q&A Maker is. It drives off something called knowledge bases. So knowledge base is, kind of a vague term, right? These can be any number of things. And when I walk you through actually creating one of these, we'll go over the options in depth. But kind of anything you can think of in your mind that you would put together a question and answer pair in, Word document, Excel document, PDF, web page, all of those are there. And so what it does, you create that, you either link it to the page or you upload the document you want it to create the question and answer pairs out of. It will make its best attempt at doing that. And then what we'll do is we create a bot that layers on top of that allows you in kind of a natural language way to ask questions of the knowledge base, and it will return answers. As we'll see, its functionality is pretty limited. It doesn't display all the intelligence of kind of a normal human conversation, but for the things that we're sitting here talking about, kind of static lists, what servers in what environment, those kinds of things, it's more than capable of doing that and helping us save time so we can focus on the fun parts of our job and not the parts of our job where people just bug us and say, hey, I want to know where this lives, or where's this box, or what data center is this in? We don't want to spend a lot of time doing that. So we're going to jump into a demo here. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to hold the creation of the service till the end. So I want to kind of take you on a tour of stuff that I've set up that works now. And then at the end, we'll go start to finish watching one of these go. So we'll walk through the service. I'm going to show you examples of simple Word documents, simple Excel sheets, and a web FAQ as well, where I've created knowledge bases off of those. I'm going to walk you through how to customize those pairs, and we'll talk about some of the reasons you might want to do that. And we'll wrap up by awing you with my amazing web design skills of how I integrated web chat into my blog. And I know because I'm an avatar, you can't see my face. The sarcasm likely didn't come through there. But what I do want to show you is how easy this actually is to drop this on a web page, because web designer appears nowhere in my resume at all. So, okay. I'll switch back and see if there are any questions. I did hear some noises. No questions at this time. Okay. And okay. All right. So hopefully, and let me just have one of the technicians confirm, you should be able to see the Azure portal now. Is that the case?
Yes, yes.
Excellent. Okay. Okay, so what we've got here is this. So I've kind of skipped a step, but if you go to qandamaker.ai and then sign in with basically whatever your Azure credentials are, you may get presented with something like this. Now, obviously, I've created a few of these. And so what the knowledge base is, let's go look at this now. So this one was very simple, and this was created actually from a Word document that I'll show you here. In fact, I'll show you right now. So, very simple Word document, right? I just made a thing. Let's pretend this is a realistic org chart. So I've got the list of who the CEO is, who the CTO is, and then their direct reports as well. You can think of a lot of different formats for this, obviously, but I just kind of want to show you something simple and then what it does with it. So I have that document, and later I'll show you how I actually uploaded that and created this. Right now, we're just going to kind of take a tour of how this works. So it ingested stuff from that file. And you'll see, so question and answer pair doesn't fit exactly, right? So what it did is it understood that it pulled Jane Doe kind of out of that tabular structure. And then, it took its best guess at an answer. So this may not be the most effective thing to do, right? So maybe if somebody says, who is our CEO? What's interesting is that will respond to that, and it will respond with this answer because it understands. It's like, oh, they're asking about the CEO. I see that appears in this question. I'm going to supply this answer. So let's actually have a quick look at that, and I'll show you kind of how this works. Okay, so what we've got. So we are going to talk to our org chart bot. And again, this is pretty simple. So what happens is, and you'll see this later, is after you create a Q&A maker knowledge base, the next thing that it's going to prompt you to do, you don't have to do, but the next thing it's going to prompt you to do is create a bot so you can talk to the knowledge base that you just made. Those were the steps I followed here. Those are the steps that you'll see towards the end of the talk here in about half an hour or so. If I want to speak to it, so again, we're speaking to the knowledge base that we just showed, which is that simple Word document, CEO, CTO, and list who they work for. I go to test in web chat. And I will say, in my experience dealing with this over the last couple years, testing mostly works. It is occasionally a little flaky, but if it is, there's a reason the start over button is right here. A, it lets you clear the screen of at history. B, sometimes it does not initialize right in this, and if you click start over there, it pretty much always fixes it. But it has greeted us, so it looks like we're going to be okay. So let's see, who is our CEO? And you'll kind of see it. So I didn't ask it specifically that question, right? Like there's no question in the knowledge base that says who is our CEO. But I asked it, it picked that term out, kind of used context clues to be like, well, this is what I think they want back. And it gave me the answer pairing. So maybe that's what we want, maybe not. So let me show you then how to add a pair. So let's say we, and I won't dive deeply into this because I want this to be very much like an introductory session, but you do have the ability to turn log analytics on here and have kind of a rich sense of all the conversations your bot is having, all the questions it's getting, all the answers it's sending. And you do have the ability to go through those and kind of make some decisions like maybe the questions and answers here aren't phrased right. And so it's a couple things I want to show you to kind of modify that. Like if you have some similar questions and it feels like people are asking one question but they mean another, you can actually click Add Alternative Phrasing here, and it will, if you've pulled an alternative phrase, like let's say people are asking that bot, who is the CEO of, Matt Inc., and we don't have Matt Inc. anywhere part of that. We didn't make the company name part of the document, but we see a lot of people are asking it that. We can add an alternative phrasing here, says, who is the CEO of Matt Inc.? And we'll go ahead and do that now. Okay, so we've got that. And if I wanted to change the answer, so one thing you may have noted, let's go back to the bot to see this. So you may have noted that it answered and it actually looked just like the Word document, right? So, the Word document had the CEO. It didn't look exactly like it because it didn't italicize it, but it's got the bold that I've got here. So the formatting was pretty similar, and we get that in the bot as well. So how does that happen? You'll notice I can format the answer here in a variety of different ways. I can have tables, images. What you've got is almost like a rich text editor here. So you have the ability to customize stuff and make it look really pretty if you want. That's not what we're trying to do here. So what we want to do is we want to be able to ask this question and get this answer back. So how do we do that? So I've added the alternative phrasing here. I then go up to save and train. And generally when it says hang tight, this should only take a minute. It usually does. Of course, this is the first time I'm doing this in front of people, so hopefully it does not make a fool out of me. While we're waiting, are there any questions or comments? Excellent. Okay. All right, so let's start over here. So it's authorizing chat with bot. This is usually just, so when you get this prompt, that means the bot, everything under the covers is working well. So let's see. So if we had asked that before, I'm not sure what answer we would have gotten. But I'm going to ask it now. And of course, it makes a fool out of me, right? So let's see, who is the CEO? And this is honestly part of the reason why I will show Luis in this talk as well. Because there are things... like there's a demo that I used to do where it was basically a chatbot and it was an FAQ from an exotic car service. You could rent a very fast car and drive it around a racetrack for an hour, and they had an FAQ page. And there were things on their FAQ page. There was one question on if you could bring guests. And then there was another question about, like, are other people authorized to be in the car? And sometimes this would struggle a bit differentiating between those two. If I was speaking to a human, it would understand that, can I bring guests and can I bring my friends? It's basically the same question, right? This wouldn't, because it would pull text out of another question pair referencing other people and friends and provide the answer to that one, when kind of in a human sense, that's not what I was asking. So we've seen here where it did kind of make a fool out of me. Sometimes multiple, if you save and train over and over again and make some changes, it will learn, it will get smarter. But right out of the box there, obviously it did not. So let's go back to my knowledge bases and kind of show you where these came from. And actually, I'm kind of glad it did this, though it's annoying right now. So there does seem to be a bit of a, I wouldn't say persistent issue, but in the last 3 days, as I kind of ran these demos through their paces, I'm getting this about once a day. So you guys saw when I signed in, I had my list of knowledge bases, right? Because we were just in one. Well, it seems to be sometimes, especially when I have another tab open where I'm trying to talk to one of the knowledge bases, that I come back and I get this. It's easy to fix, but it is a little bit annoying. So basically just sign out, sign in. And hopefully Azure's going to continue to play nice here once I go right back in. All right. so we'll see I sign in. So again, you sign in using your Azure credentials, and through it goes, and it should come back to the list of knowledge bases once again. Of course it is taking its sweet time in front of a room full of people. Here we go. Excellent. Okay. All right. So let's go back to org chart. So we looked at that Word document, and we saw I just had 4 lines of text, right? How are there 92 question and answer pairs? Well, this is when I walk you through creation towards the end, you're going to understand where this comes from. But so these question and answer pairs, this is all I've got, right? That came from the document. That's all there is. The rest of it's empty. What is all this stuff? So you'll see the source. So the source is my Word document. The rest of these pairs come from something I didn't upload. I haven't explained this, right? It's nothing I made. So what it is, you can, and we'll see, like I said, in the demo at the end, how you can do this. You can give your chatbot a personality if you wish. And what that means is it's basically uploading some what it calls chit chat. And it gives it a little bit of personality, especially if it's like a customer-facing thing, which is not necessarily what we're talking about here. But if you want a customer-facing thing, or it is some portal where people are coming and asking where servers live and what environments what, and all of that, you can give it a little bit of personality. There's like 6 or 7 different options. And when you choose that, what it does is it adds this to the knowledge base. So you don't have to create this, but it will say, if I want I think it's like professional, friendly, witty, those sorts of things, it'll add all of these. So stuff that people will, whether you ask Siri or Alexa or whatever, the stuff that people like to add, like it has those questions in here, and then it provides, since I chose professional for this one, a very professional, boring answer, right? So we'll see how to create those at the end, but I wanted to kind of highlight that because you may have confused if you're looking down at the bottom of the page, like, well, he showed a Word document. It's got 4 things in it. Where are there 92 pairs, and what is this source? So we've talked about kind of what that is. Let me show you then a couple other examples of the knowledge bases that I've got. And we showed customization as well. Okay, so let's dive into servers and environments. And again, these are basic examples. So what I'm hoping you walk away from this talk is, oh, that stuff was kind of interesting. I'm thinking of ways that I can use these now. So I don't have complicated examples here because I really just kind of want to plant that seed. Okay, so we've got an Excel sheet that I actually pre-customized this. So let me show you the Excel sheet. Pretty boring, right? Environment name, server name, 2 dev, 2 QA, 2 prod. So just a really basic example of, of a spreadsheet you might have, like what environments hold which servers of mine. But let's go back to the web here. So you may have noticed, all right, it says the source is that Excel document. You didn't see anywhere in there where I said what servers are in dev. So what I did is I basically customized this because this isn't really a true question and answer pair, right? But I went in here and changed this from saying dev to what servers are in dev, and then the answer being the complete answer. And I did that by hand. You could also think of maybe ways you can do that in the Excel sheet itself. Maybe you would add a column or something where, if you want there to be kind of boilerplate text, you could add that question column and have it better phrased and all that. I just uploaded a straight document and then changed it here. So let's see what that looks like. And so just as a further example, so I added professional to the one we looked at before. I added witty to this one. So you see, instead of all the stuff you can ask and it says, no, I don't have a body. It just says, nah, I'm good. So, it's a little lighter, a little more fun. So like I said, this was populated from an Excel sheet. Let's look at one last one here. Because I think this, depending on your environment, I think these are often the most interesting. So one thing I found as I was putting together content for this talk, there are review pages for frequently asked question pages. That's not a thing that I knew existed. But as I read through those, it talked about how the FAQ page for Zappos.com, which sells shoes and shoe stuff, was, I guess, regarded as one of the best ones. And so you'll note this source, this isn't a file name, right? This is, I pointed it at a web page, and it put this together from the page. And so if you go to the page, it's, you can kind of click on that and it'll show all this. This ingested all of that and gives you the ability to essentially talk to that page, but you're actually talking to the knowledge base here. So let's have a quick look at that bot and just kind of show you what that looks like. And then we'll dive back into Luis, and then we'll start creating some of these. Okay, so we're going to talk to the Zappos bot. And so we've gotten pretty used to this at this point. Hopefully get hello and welcome here in a second. Yes, excellent. Okay, so we'll do that. And then I'm going to say, how do I return my shoes or shows? So I've asked it a question. There it goes. So it, is that, and this is where out of the box, especially with more complicated text, did that pull exactly the right answer pair? Maybe not. That's where additional training, adding alternative phrasing and things like that. For a human, how do I return my shoes and what is your return policy? For you in the audience, you think I just asked it the same thing, right? That's where kind of understanding that there's natural language understanding taking place here, but not at the level of Luis or something like that. So that's where we need to analyze the questions that our customers, that our users, whoever are asking. And then use that alternative phrasing and some of the other things that I showed you there to make sure that the experience is everything we want it to be. Okay, all right, let's go back to the slides here. Oh, actually, one second. All right, so we've seen this, and you may be sitting there like, okay, chatbots are cool. Yeah, I can think of some ways in my environment I can use this. I can think of some documents I can upload and let people interrogate those documents instead of me. But all you've shown me is a Azure Portal thing. Like, this isn't user friendly. I'm not going to tell a user, just go to portal.azure.com and click through the resource group and click into this bot that may have a weird name, bot 01234. It's going to do that, right? So how can I actually get this in a way that's consumable by normal folks without people having to have Azure creds and all that? So this is my blog, SQLatspeed.com. Like I said, web design, not my forte at all. You can probably tell. But what I did is I added a page that hooks up to the org chart bot. The way I did that, and you'll see here, if you go to channels, and of course, this is the Zappos bot. So this is where you can wire these into. Now, I'm going to show a simple version where it's just a web chat. You'll see the additional channels here, just about any kind of conversational app we've got, right? So Skype, Facebook, Telegram, Slack, all that. You can wire your bot into those channels as well. Now, that's a little deeper than this talk is intended to be, but if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, well, this is cool, and he's about to show us how to do web chat, but we use a lot of Slack or we use a lot of Teams. How do I do that? If you click through here, there are instructions on exactly how to do that. It's basically going to say, take your access key, put that here, run this code there, and off it goes. I'm going to show you the simplest version of this, which is just dropping it on a web page. So again, back to Matt Inc., who is our CTO. There we go. And this is just from my blog. You can go play with it now. As we've seen, the conversation ability is pretty limited. I didn't give it a lot to work with, but I did this just basically by following the example here. And I went through to get bot embed codes, and you click to the web chat configure H plays. There's your secret keys. I'm not going to show those to you. And here's the iframe code. And I copied and pasted it into a page on my blog, added my key from here to there, and done. So pretty cool stuff there. Any questions about any of that before we go back to the slides? Don't see any raised hands. Okay, all good. Okay, so as we saw, like Q&A Maker is pretty cool. I'm able to have a conversation with it. Hopefully you're sitting there thinking like maybe org charts are boring and a server environment list is boring, but there's some things that you can think of that you can do there. What if I want to have a richer experience than that, right? Because we could see where we could kind of fool it. So it's better than nothing. It's certainly for our utilities good enough, but if you want to dive deeper, is there a way to do that? The answer is yes. Luis is the answer to that. So that stands for Language Understanding Intelligence Service. Obviously, that doesn't really roll off the tongue, so Luis it is. So how does it work? So basically, it determines the intent of a statement. It then, concurrently, attempts to isolate the entities within that statement. And I'm about to show you an example where it's like ordering a pizza. So it understands order, that's an intent, this is something, and these are things that you create. It comes with some pre-built ones, but you can make your own as well. So it does those, it returns a JSON object, just like all of this stuff. And like I said, there are pre-built models here for certain things, restaurant reservations, home automations, things like that. Or you can create custom models as well. You can build an app using APIs, just like the rest of this stuff. But you note, I haven't shown any code yet, really, except for that HTML, which kind of counts. HTML's code, right? Or you can build it through the portal as well. But where I said, like, I kind of wanted to let you know there are ways to go deeper on this stuff. I've linked, and I'll have these slides uploaded at the end of the session. But there is an excellent Microsoft example talking about how to create a Luis bot. It would take a little longer probably than the time we have here, so I don't show it. So that's going to involve Visual Studio, something called the Bot Framework emulator, and it walks you through how to add some natural language understanding to your bot. That, like we saw, the Q&A Maker built one kind of doesn't really have a lot of that, just bare bones. Luis allows us to go a lot deeper here. So let's take a demo of it. Hopefully you'll kind of quickly understand what it does, and we'll get back to how we make one of these. Okay. So I have intentionally not signed in. So I have, for some other projects that I've been working on, hopefully a book you may see one day, I have some projects here. So if I sign in, you're going to see all my stuff. If you go to this and you've never created anything here, you're going to see what I see now. So you go to luis.ai, and we're going to see this in action. So we talked about how there's entities and intents, right? And then utterances and Luis verbiage are basically what the user is saying. Now, this is likely ingested through a web app bot, like we've just shown, or through a bot you write with the bot framework if you really want to dive into code and kind of go nuts there. But I'm just going to show you the basics here. So let's pretend that there's a web app bot somewhere, and somebody's told the web app bot to order it a pizza. So what is Luis doing under the covers? So it's classifying entities. So we'll kind of work up from the bottom, right? So what are the objects in the utterance that it got? Pizzas. Is there a number? Yeah, they said order me 2 pizzas. So the number is 2. So we've classified the entities. What are the intents? So these intents are created. These are pre-built. So, and there's just for demo purposes, some basic ones. There's a food order, there's a none, there's a location finder, like where is the nearest club, would use that one. There's a reminder, this one would use that one. There's book flights, not a lot of us are doing that right now, but there's also book flight. So it goes through all those intents and says, well, the utterance says order me. I'm going to predict that this is food order, and I'm very confident that it is. A Luis conversation under the covers looks like this. So there's more analysis of what we're saying, and it is using some pre-built stuff. Like I said, you can fully customize every bit of this, create all your own entities, all your own intents, all your own kind of back and forth, multi-part conversations. And this where you find Q&A Maker lacking. So the thing with Q&A Maker is the flexibility comes from the information we provide to it, because the implementation is pretty simple. The implementation here is fairly complex, and it's going to take a lot more time. But if you want to add kind of that richness to the conversation that we see a Q&A Maker bot didn't have, then we're going to use something like Luis and build on it from there. And again, we can create a bot like we just showed and put it over the top of one of these models. More traditionally, you're going to see where that's where you're actually diving into code. You're opening Studio and doing all that. All right, so go back to the slides. And we got about 10 minutes left. So we want to talk about how we create a chatbot, right? Okay, so we're going to create a service. We're going to populate a knowledge base. We're going to publish it, and we're going to test the web chat in Portal. And in theory, do all this in about 7 or 8 minutes. Okay, so I am on Q&A Maker. And I'm going to go out to create a knowledge base. And I'm going to walk you through this from scratch. One step I'm going to skip just because it takes 2 to 3 minutes and it's kind of boring. I have a Q&A service pre-provisioned. If I didn't, I would click here and you'll see it's going to open a link to Portal. It's going to take me directly to a page to do this. And again, this is part of the reason I'm not going to show a lot of this. This is the part of this that takes, it's really dry and takes generally 2 to 3 minutes. But as you're walking through it, provided you don't have one, here's what you're going to see. You're going to select the subscription for your resource. You're going to select the resource group as well, a name, pricing tier. So I did not mean to click that. There are, some free tiers here. So it's fairly inexpensive to play with. You're going to provide Azure search details as well, and the pricing tier for that. And then when you create the resource, you're going to host the app service, the kind of runtime for it, and you're going to provide that name here as well. This is one part of this that I pre-baked. So we'll close this, and for my purposes, we're going to use mine. So I've gone through, I've selected my subscription, and you'll see my list of services, 2021 sessions. It's going to load the supported language. I'm going to stick with English here. And then it's pretty straightforward, right? So we're going to use the Zappos FAQ again to kind of show you how it populates from a web page. So we're going to do Zappos example 2. And I know Buck Woody says never type in a demo, but sometimes we can't help it. Okay, so now we're going to populate our knowledge base. So remember I said I would talk more about the supported documents. Here's the list. So comma separated values, oddly enough, aren't. Tab separated value file, yes. PDF, yes. Docx, yes. XLSX, yes. Couple more sources, and also HTML as well. And that's the one we're going to use here. Before I skip through this one, though, one thing I do want to point out is everything I've shown you is kind of ask it a question, get an answer. So we're not building a conversation. If you do have a document that has question and answer pairs that kind of follow a conversational path, like maybe the user asks the bot something, the bot provides the answer, and then answers back and prompts the user to ask it something else or to do something else. That's a multi-turn conversation. If you have a document built like that, and I'm not going to show that here because, again, that's probably a level beyond where we want to be, you do have to check this box so it understands that it's ingesting a document that has a multi-turn conversation in it. Otherwise, it's just going to assume there's a question, and there's an answer, and there's pairs of those. So, okay. All right, so we've got, I'll get the URL for Zappos FAQ here. And I'm going to drop that in. And here's the chit chat thing. So like we saw, it provides you a tab separated value file of a bunch of questions and just kind of some conversational bits that it can add. I don't care to have that here, so I'm going to select none. But we've seen what professional and witty look like as well. So I've done all this. I've created a Q&A service that you didn't see, and then I've wired it up to it where I just selected these. I've named it. I said I want to populate it from this URL here. I don't want to give it any chit-chat ability, and I'm going to create my KB. And so again, we get hang tight. This should only take a minute. Like I said, hopefully it does indeed only take a minute. Great time for questions if anybody has any. Okay, so it took less than a minute, which is great. So you'll see what we've ingested here. Like as I pull this page over, here's the list of questions. Our knowledge base has this, but I don't have a bot for you. I don't have a way to talk to this. So how do I do that? So I go up here and I click publish. And so it says your service has never been deployed. I know that. I don't wish to make any changes to it. I'm going to click the publish button here. This would look exactly the same if I had uploaded the Word document, if I had uploaded the Excel document. I just happened to pick this as a base. So my service has been deployed. Cool. Can I talk to it yet? No. And that's where I said at the start of the session, it'll prompt you. It says like, well, okay, here's an HTTP request to call your knowledge base, but there's no bot way to talk to it. How can there be? Let's create a bot. And again, it's pretty straightforward. I haven't written any code. All I've had to do is point this at something that's serving the information that I want people to be able to ask so they don't ask me. So we're going to call this Zappos example 2. Gives me a green check mark. Again, we're going to specify subscription, resource group, pricing tier. There's a free tier here. I'm good with that. We've got our app name. This is again, if we wanted to go deeper into the bot composer framework and stuff like that, we're picking the SDK language. If I wanted to create a Visual Studio project out of this and nerd out, I could. I'm not going to here. Our app service plan, which we created when we created the Q&A maker resource. We want to specify that here. We want to leave application insights on because that gives you the log analytics and the ability to go back and see the conversation, see the questions and answers that are passing through if you turn that off, you don't have the ability to do that. So definitely if you have interest there, leave that on. So we're going to click create here. And it validates it for a few seconds. And if you're accustomed to working in Azure at all, this is going to be the very normal thing that you'd expect to see. Deployment is in progress. I've done this several times over the past several days. So knock on wood, this should work just fine here in about 20 seconds. In the meantime, let me switch back over to Avatar Land and see. Okay, no raised hands or questions. We've got 3 green check marks. That's always good. It means it's about to wrap up here usually. And then here. Yeah, excellent. All right. Go to resource. So how can I talk to this? Right? So I click on test in web chat. And I'm going to get my hello and welcome here in a bit. And if not, I'm just going to start talking to it anyway. So how do I know my shoe size? Which is a normal thing to ask a shoe website, right? All right, so what's it going to say? It's going to pull from that knowledge base. There you go. Here's how you measure your shoe size. Remember I talked about how there's a rich text editor for the answer stuff? You'll note that there's a web link here. So I can click on this and learn about how I measure my feet and all those sorts of things. So something like that, if you want to, let's say a user asks you, what data center is server QA2 in? Maybe you don't want to put together the question and answer pair for 10,000 servers, but you have a document that lists all the things in data center A And you could link that document here, and so they could click through. You don't have to specify all the information in the answer is basically what I'm saying. You can just provide kind of a generic web link, which is going to cover a lot more questions and mean you don't have to specify a question and answer pair for every single thing that anybody would possibly ask. So we did it. There's no smoke and mirrors there, right? That took about 5 minutes and we're up and going. So basically just think about your source and it really is that easy. So how can these help me? So we've seen some examples that came to my mind. We've seen a model of, I've got a list of servers, I've got a list of environments they're in, and I've uploaded that, and I can ask what servers are in QA, and it's going to send me that list. We saw a very simple org chart, right? Those are kind of two specific things that I thought of that are kind of business use cases for this. I prefer the top one because the reason I started playing with this stuff is this kind of data is really interesting to me, but it also can be so helpful. Like I said, I cannot think of how much time I lost over the years answering the same questions over and over again. You know, what server is this database on? What data center is this server in? All those sorts of things that we can provide a knowledge base to somebody, have them ask it instead of me. So basically, any repetitive questions that you have to answer over and over again, let Q&A Maker and a web app bot do that work for you. We just set one up in 5 minutes. Super easy. Let it do that work. Tell people, talk to my bot because I don't want to talk to you because I have work to do, right? And last but not least, what this helps is this is a resume builder too. I mean, I can say when I started playing with AI stuff, and it wasn't just this 3.5 years ago, that's opened so many professional doors for me to get involved with books and companies and other things. This helps diversify our skill sets outside of data. Having some AI knowledge, which at the end of this session you can say that you now have as well, makes us more valuable either to the company where we are now or the company that would next want to hire us, because not only are we a data pro, we know a little bit of AI stuff as well. With that, thanks for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, I really desire whatever constructive feedback you have, good or bad. This is a brand new session, and I hope my excitement comes across. I hope you learned something. But if there are things you'd like to see change, please let me know. Thank you so much for the opportunity, to the organizers as well. And once again, please make sure you thank the sponsors, because without them, none of us are here. And with that, I am through. And I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and attempt to leave the stage. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.